I sat before the blank page on my screen, the cursor blinking steadily as if measuring my hesitation. The glow of the monitor was the only light in the room, casting long shadows over scattered notebooks and half-filled pages. I could feel my heart pounding, a rhythm that echoed the pressure weighing down on me. This assignment was unlike anything I had faced before. A demand not just for answers, but for something original, something that bore my own mark. The weight of that expectation pressed heavy on my chest, making the simplest task feel monumental. My mind raced, spinning through fragments of ideas that refused to settle. I reached for my textbook, hoping familiarity might anchor me, but the pages blurred as my thoughts scattered. The neat notes I'd taken in class suddenly seemed sterile, insufficient for this challenge. I needed more than facts or summaries. I needed insight, originality, a spark that felt just out of reach. The blank page was a mirror, reflecting not only my uncertainty but the magnitude of standing apart, of stepping beyond the boundaries I'd always known. I tried to break the silence with a plan. Maybe if I searched online I could find something to guide me, a framework, a template, a formula that could make this task manageable. Hours slipped by as I scrolled through blogs, forums, and sample papers. I copied snippets here and there, thinking that borrowing a piece might unlock the rest. I even peeked at my classmates' work, hoping their approaches might illuminate the path. But each attempt felt hollow, like fitting puzzle pieces that didn't belong. The words I borrowed didn't carry my voice. The ideas, though clever, were not mine. This imitation left a hollow ache, a growing sense of disconnect. I realized I was trying to force my thoughts into molds crafted by others, shapes that didn't fit the contours of my own understanding. The harder I tried to conform, the more fragmented my ideas became. It felt like trying to cram a jagged stone into a smooth, round hole. No matter how much I pushed, the edges caught and scratched. The frustration was exhausting, gnawing at my confidence until all I could hear was the relentless ticking of the clock reminding me of time slipping away. The pressure wasn't just about the deadline. It was about the promise of this assignment. It demanded something new, a voice that stood out in a sea of sameness. I was caught in a storm between the fear of failing and the terror of exposing my true, unpolished thoughts. What if my ideas weren't good enough? What if my originality was just a mirage hiding inadequacy? These questions spun around my mind, each one tightening the grip of doubt. I tried to quiet the internal chaos by drafting outlines, bullet points, anything to corral my scattered thoughts. But every structure I built felt like a cage, confining rather than freeing. The more I framed my work in expected shapes, the more disconnected I felt from the assignment and from myself. It was as if my own creativity was slipping away, replaced by a mechanical process that left me numb. One evening, exhausted and defeated, I closed my laptop with a heavy sigh. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the night outside my window. In that quiet, the enormity of the challenge settled over me like a shroud. I realized I had been trying to solve a puzzle with the wrong pieces, seeking a path where none existed. This assignment wasn't a problem to be fixed by rules or imitation. It was a call to create something uniquely mine. The thought both terrified and intrigued me. Vulnerability loomed large. Exposing my own voice meant risking failure, criticism, or worse, insignificance. But beneath the fear was a flicker of something else. Possibility. What if this assignment wasn't a barrier but an invitation? What if the struggle I felt was part of a deeper process I hadn't yet understood? Still, the path forward was unclear. I wrestled with myself, caught between the safety of familiar methods and the unknown territory of originality. The tension was suffocating, a battle between the urge to hide behind imitation and the quiet call to be authentic. I felt stranded in a liminal space, neither here nor there, suspended between fear and hope. In these moments, I thought about the expectations stacked around me, the grades, the approval, the silent judgments I imagined from teachers and peers. It was easy to lose myself in these external pressures, to believe that success meant fitting in rather than standing out. But the assignment demanded the opposite, and that paradox left me disoriented. I tried to remind myself of past challenges I had overcome, moments when I had stepped into uncertainty and come through stronger. Yet this felt different. This time the stakes were personal in a new way. It wasn't just about completing a task. It was about facing the rawness of my own creativity and the vulnerability it demanded. Late into the night, I scribbled fragmented notes, phrases that felt like whispers from my own mind. They were messy, unpolished, and sometimes nonsensical, but they were mine. Still, the fear of imperfection held me back from fully embracing them. I was trapped in a cycle of wanting to produce something great, while fearing that what I had wasn't enough. The days blurred together as I oscillated between bursts of hope and waves of doubt. I went through the motions of research and drafting, but my heart wasn't in it. The assignment felt like a mountain I was meant to climb without a clear trail, each step uncertain and fraught with the risk of slipping. One afternoon, overwhelmed by the jumble of thoughts and the relentless pressure, I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. I tried to silence the noise, the expectations, the fears, the comparisons. In that quiet moment, I sensed that this struggle was more than just about the assignment. It was a confrontation with my own fears of inadequacy and failure. I realized that the very uniqueness of this task was its greatest challenge. There was no template because it required something that could not be borrowed or copied. It demanded that I stand alone, that I trust my instincts even when they seemed faint or flawed. Yet, embracing that truth felt like stepping off a cliff into unknown depths. The safety nets of imitation and formula vanished, leaving me exposed. The internal battle raged. Should I retreat to the familiar or leap into the uncertainty? I found myself longing for guidance, for someone to say, "It's okay to be unsure, to stumble, to create something imperfect." But that reassurance was elusive. The assignment was a solitary journey, a test not just of skill but of courage. Despite the turmoil, a small seed of determination took root. Beneath the frustration and fear, I felt a quiet resolve to keep trying, to keep searching for a way through the fog. I didn't know what that path looked like yet, but I knew I couldn't give up. As I returned to the blank page, the cursor still blinking steadily, I felt the weight of expectations but also a flicker of something new. A tentative willingness to face the assignment on its own terms, to find a voice that was truly mine. The struggle was far from over, but I was no longer running from it. I was beginning to understand that this challenge was not just about producing work. It was about discovering myself within the task. The days that followed were a slow unraveling of the tension that had gripped me so tightly before. The pressure hadn't disappeared. It lingered like a low hum beneath everything I did, but something inside me had shifted. Instead of fighting against the uncertainty, I found myself leaning into it, cautiously at first, like dipping a toe into cold water. I stopped searching for quick fixes or perfect formulas and began to explore the assignment on my own terms, letting my thoughts wander where they might without judgment or expectation. This change wasn't sudden or dramatic. It came in small moments, scribbling a half-formed idea in the margins of my notebook, doodling shapes and words without trying to organize them, pausing to reflect on what intrigued me rather than what I thought I was supposed to write. The chaotic mess on my desk, once a source of frustration, now felt like a playground for ideas, a space where I could experiment and fail without consequence. I started to see the assignment not as a rigid task but as an open field, inviting me to roam and discover. Conversations with friends became a surprising source of comfort and insight. One evening, over mugs of tea, I shared my fears and struggles with someone who had faced similar challenges. She spoke of her own breakthroughs, not as moments of sudden clarity, but as gradual acceptance of imperfection and uncertainty. Sometimes, she said, you have to let go of the idea that your work has to be perfect or even fully formed. The process is messy and that's okay. That's where the real creativity happens. Her words stayed with me. I realized I had been holding tightly to the illusion of control, trying to shape my ideas before they were ready, fearing that any misstep would mean failure. But creativity, I began to understand, was less about control and more about exploration, about trusting that even in the messiness something worthwhile could emerge. I started to approach the assignment differently. Instead of aiming for neat outlines or polished sentences, I allowed myself to brainstorm freely, jotting down whatever came to mind, no matter how incomplete or strange. Some days I filled pages with questions rather than answers, others with sketches or random notes. I stopped censoring my thoughts and embraced the unpredictability of the process. It was uncomfortable at times, especially when the ideas felt disconnected or my confidence wavered, but I held on to the notion that this was part of the journey. Through this messy, nonlinear process, I began to uncover threads of meaning, small sparks of connection between ideas that hinted at something larger. The assignment was no longer a looming obstacle, but a space where I could express parts of myself that had been hidden beneath layers of doubt and expectation. I found moments where my curiosity stirred, where a particular thought or question ignited a flicker of excitement. Those moments became anchors guiding me through the fog. Solitude also played a crucial role. I carved out quiet time away from distractions and comparisons, creating a sanctuary where I could listen to my own voice without interruption. In those still moments, I learned to pay attention not just to the assignment's demands but to what truly interested me, what stirred my emotions or sparked my imagination. It was like tuning into a frequency I had ignored for too long, discovering a personal rhythm that made the work feel alive. I noticed a subtle but profound change in how I related to failure. Instead of fearing it as a final verdict, I began to see it as a necessary step, a signal that I was pushing boundaries and venturing beyond comfort zones. Each stumble was an opportunity to learn, to refine, to deepen my understanding. This shift didn't erase my anxiety, but it softened it, turning it into a companion rather than an enemy. The journey was far from linear. There were days when I doubted myself, when the chaos felt overwhelming and I questioned whether I was making any progress at all. But I kept returning to the process, trusting that the act of engaging with the assignment authentically would eventually yield something meaningful. I reminded myself that creativity rarely followed a straight path, and that the discomfort was part of growth. As I embraced this evolving mindset, the assignment began to feel less like a burden and more like an invitation. An opportunity to explore, to experiment, to express something that was uniquely mine. The pressure to conform faded into the background, replaced by a growing sense of freedom. I realized that this was more than just a task. It was a journey toward self-discovery, an unfolding that required patience, courage, and openness. The desk, once a battlefield strewn with crumpled papers and frantic notes, transformed into a vibrant workspace alive with color and movement. I started using different pens, drawing arrows and bubbles, connecting ideas across pages in a way that felt playful and organic. The messiness was no longer a source of shame, but a testament to my willingness to engage fully and honestly. I found myself smiling more during these sessions, surprised by the joy that could emerge from uncertainty. Small victories, a well-turned phrase, a sudden insight, a fresh perspective, became celebrations, reminders that progress was happening even if it wasn't always visible on the surface. I learned to savor these moments, knowing they were the seeds of something deeper. This process also taught me to listen differently, not just to the assignment's requirements but to myself. I paid attention to what excited me, what made me pause or linger. Instead of chasing external validation or trying to fit into expected molds, I began to trust my instincts, allowing my curiosity and passion to lead. It was a subtle but powerful shift that opened new possibilities and renewed my confidence. Though uncertainty remained, I no longer saw it as a threat. It was part of the creative landscape, a space where ideas could breathe and evolve. I embraced the ambiguity, finding comfort in not having all the answers at once. The assignment was no longer a problem to be solved but a process to be lived. I remember one afternoon sitting by the window, sunlight filtering across my scattered papers, as a quiet sense of calm settled over me. The chaos on my desk mirrored the chaos in my mind, but there was a thread weaving through it all. A thread of authenticity that belonged to me. For the first time, I felt connected to the assignment in a way that was both personal and profound. This turning point didn't erase all doubts. They still whispered in the background. But I had discovered a new way to engage, one that honored imperfection and uncertainty as essential parts of creation. The assignment had shifted from a source of anxiety to a space of possibility. With each passing day, I grew more comfortable with the messy, nonlinear path of creativity. The assignment was becoming less about meeting expectations, and more about exploring my own voice and ideas. I found that the courage to embrace vulnerability opened doors to insights I hadn't anticipated. In this evolving relationship with my work, I learned that originality was not a fixed destination but a journey, a process of discovery that required patience and trust. The assignment was inviting me to take that journey, to move beyond fear and doubt, and to embrace the fullness of my own perspective. As I continued to delve deeper, I felt a quiet excitement building. A sense that something meaningful was emerging from the fragments and questions. The assignment was no longer an obstacle but a canvas, waiting for my unique touch. I was beginning to see not just what I had to do but who I could become through the process. This realization brought a sense of peace amid the ongoing uncertainty. The path ahead was still unclear, but I no longer feared the unknown. Instead, I welcomed it as a space for growth and creative expression. In these moments of exploration and openness, I found a renewed connection to my work and to myself. The assignment was no longer something to endure but something to embrace. A challenge that was shaping not just my skills but my understanding of who I was as a creator. The journey was far from over, but I was no longer alone in it. I had begun to trust the process, to listen to my instincts, and to find joy in the unfolding discovery. The assignment had transformed from a source of anxiety into an invitation to grow, and I was ready to answer that call. The breakthrough came quietly, without fanfare or sudden epiphany. One afternoon, as I sat surrounded by a sea of scattered papers and colorful notes, a gentle clarity began to emerge from the chaos. The assignment, which had once felt like a towering wall, started to feel more like a canvas, an open space inviting me to paint with my own colors, shapes, and textures. The scattered thoughts and messy sketches were no longer distractions but pieces of a larger picture that I was finally beginning to see. I realized that the uniqueness of this assignment was not a hurdle to overcome but its defining feature, a call to originality that could not be met by imitation or conformity. This understanding shifted everything. Instead of trying to fit my ideas into predetermined molds, I allowed them to take shape in their own time and form. The pressure to produce something perfect gave way to a gentle confidence in my own voice and perspective. As I began to write more freely, the words flowed with a newfound ease. They weren't polished or flawless, but they carried my authentic thoughts and emotions. Each sentence felt like a thread weaving through the tapestry I was creating, imperfect yet meaningful. The assignment transformed from a task to be completed into a story to be told, one that reflected my journey as much as the topic itself. In those moments, I felt an emotional lift, a sense of accomplishment that was deeper than any grade or external approval could provide. The frustration and doubt that had weighed so heavily before were replaced by a quiet pride in having embraced the challenge on my own terms. The assignment had become a mirror reflecting, not just my skills but my courage to be different. I found myself pausing often to reflect on how far I had come, from the initial overwhelm and imitation to this place of authenticity and creativity. The process had not been easy. It had required patience, vulnerability, and a willingness to wade through uncertainty. Yet it had also been deeply rewarding, revealing strengths I hadn't recognized in myself before. This transformation reshaped not only my approach to this assignment, but my attitude toward challenges in general. I understood that true originality arises not from following rules or copying others, but from trusting one's own insights and embracing the messiness of creation. The assignment was no longer a source of anxiety, but a celebration of individuality. I remember one evening as I reviewed my work, feeling a sense of connection to the words on the page. They felt like an extension of myself, a voice that was uniquely mine. The cluttered desk was a testament to this journey, a space where ideas had been born, explored, and shaped. The colors, scribbles, and edits were markers of growth and discovery. This moment marked an emotional high point in my journey. I had moved beyond confusion and frustration to clarity and confidence. The assignment's uniqueness, once a source of fear, had become a gift, a chance to explore uncharted territory and express my individuality. It was a breakthrough that changed how I viewed both the task and myself. I realized that the hardest part had been letting go of the need to fit in, to conform, and to seek external validation. When I embraced my own perspective, I found freedom. Creativity thrived not in neat, orderly packages, but in the messy, vibrant space of curiosity and self-trust. As I continued refining my work, I welcomed the imperfections as part of the story. Each revision was an opportunity to deepen my expression and clarify my voice. I learned to listen not just to external expectations but to the quiet guidance of my own instincts. This balance between discipline and openness became the heart of my process. The assignment had become more than a requirement. It was a journey of personal growth and self-discovery. I had learned to face uncertainty with courage and to value my unique contributions. The experience reshaped my understanding of creativity as an evolving dialogue between fear and freedom, structure and spontaneity. I felt grateful for the struggle, recognizing that the early frustrations had been necessary catalysts for this transformation. They pushed me beyond comfort zones and forced me to confront my own doubts. The assignment was a mirror reflecting not just the task at hand, but the deeper parts of myself I needed to explore. Looking back, I see how this challenge opened doors to a new way of thinking and creating. It taught me that authenticity is not a destination but a process, a continuous unfolding that requires patience, trust, and courage. The assignment was an invitation to embrace that process fully. In the quiet moments of reflection, I thought of others who might feel overwhelmed by unique challenges. I wanted to tell them that the struggle is part of the journey, that it signifies being on the brink of something important. Sometimes the greatest growth comes from stepping off the beaten path and trusting your own voice. The assignment's uniqueness was no longer a barrier but a beacon, guiding me toward original expression and deeper understanding. It invited me to create, to explore, and to celebrate what set my work apart. This realization brought a profound sense of freedom and empowerment. As I wrapped up my work, I felt a sense of completion that went beyond finishing the assignment. It was a recognition of the courage it took to be authentic, and the joy that comes from honoring one's unique voice. The cluttered desk, once a symbol of chaos, was now a testament to growth and creativity. This journey had reshaped not only my approach to assignments, but my relationship with creativity itself. I had learned to embrace imperfection, to trust my instincts, and to find joy in the process of discovery. The assignment was no longer just a task. It was a celebration of individuality and personal growth. If you've ever felt paralyzed by the pressure to conform or the fear of failing, remember that freedom lies in embracing your own perspective. The path to originality may be messy and uncertain, but it is also where true creativity lives. Trust the process, listen to your voice, and allow yourself to explore without judgment. In that stillness, I understood that this assignment was more than a requirement. It was a canvas waiting for my personal touch. Each decision was an opportunity to create something authentic and meaningful. Through this experience, I discovered that every unique challenge carries an invitation to innovate and embrace what makes our work truly ours. The journey was complete, but the lessons would stay with me, guiding my future endeavors. I had turned frustration into inspiration, doubt into confidence, and a daunting challenge into a celebration of my individuality. This was more than an assignment. It was a defining moment in my creative life. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.